Welcome, welcome. This is Donna, and I'd like to welcome you to another fabulous episode of You Are Designed for Greatness. And I have a special guest today. Kelly is with me today, and she is going to be sharing her story. And get your seatbelts on because there is a lot of good information in here that will be able to help you understand that you were designed for greatness and how to get there. So Kelly, tell us about yourself and say hello.
Hi, Donna. Hello, everybody who's listening. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Kelly Ruta. I was a clinical psychotherapist for 20 years. And 6 years ago, I made a leap out of that industry and into supporting female entrepreneurs as a CEO development strategist. Basically, I made a leap of faith to answer what felt like a vocation and a calling. And it was very scary, but it has been incredibly rewarding. And I love coming on podcasts like this because I get an opportunity to talk about the things you don't see that go on behind the things that you do see. So I do a lot of video, a lot of speaking from stages, a lot of podcast interviews, and I try to speak very openly to audiences about the things that you don't see that impact that calling, that experience, that vocation, that really becoming the person that you were, born to be.
So what stuff did you feel like you needed to hide, or do other people feel like they need to hide? Tell us a little bit about your history.
Yeah. So one of the jokes in the therapist sort of niche is nobody becomes a therapist because they had a great childhood. And I've never met a therapist that didn't laugh at that because they all said, well, yes, that's actually true. And the same is true for me. So I had a very financially privileged childhood, but in terms of mental health and stability and things like that, it was very different behind closed doors than it looked to the outside world. So my life really started with sexual abuse at the age of 3.
Oh.
And when a child is exposed to something like that, we call it mental health or mental illness. I think mental injury is a more accurate.
I like that better.
Yeah, it's not even mine. I'm borrowing that from Daryl Hammond, who's from Saturday Night Live, who had significant trauma. And he said that's more accurate. And when I heard it, I thought to myself, you know what? That's exactly it. When a young child is exposed to something so damaging, it's not just on a psychological level. It damages the way your brain functions. So that happened to me at a young age. And I have gone on to manifest different expressions of that trauma for my entire life. I'm going to be 50 this year. So this has been going on for 47 years. Everything from depression to anxiety to an eating disorder to physical manifestations like severe insomnia, heart palpitations, panic attacks. I mean, you name it. It just sort of runs the gamut. And so I felt very called to help people, to serve people, to support people, to be properly trained to do that, because I knew from a young age how disruptive mental health challenges can be and how it can just rob you from joy and health and so many things. But also now that I'm in a different field, I feel it's really important to speak to this word trauma openly and to show people that you can be living with small t trauma, which is the trauma that a lot of people kind of minimize and overlook and say, oh, that wasn't that big of a deal.
That wasn't that.
And big T trauma. And you can still be a high functioning person. You can still have a great life, a successful business, whatever it is you feel called to do.
So while all of that crazy behavior, a wide variety of behavior and stuff that you were using to cope with the trauma, you still developed a successful business?
3.
Wow.
3. I'm on my 3rd. So I had 2 really successful psychotherapy practices. And now I am a CEO development strategist, and I work with women who own service-based companies. And the only way I have been able to do that is by building a support network and a set of tools for both healing and coping, because you have to do both. PTSD is unfortunately not something we have a cure developed for yet. So you both have to live with it. And because treatments and different options are being developed pretty rapidly right now, we also have an opportunity to lean in and find other ways to heal on every level while we live with this every single day. And it is something you live with it every single day.
Wow. So what are some of these tools?
Yeah. So there are several. Number one, therapy. I've been in and out of therapy since I was 14 years old. I continue to go to therapy. I have tried all different kinds because at different stages of my own growth and development, I've needed different things. So I've done, CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. I have done traditional psychodynamic talk therapy. I've also done trauma-focused therapy. So EMDR, which is eye movement. I always botch it when I say it. EMDR. It's basically bilateral stimulation of your brain that helps you process traumatic memory so that you're not constantly in fight or flight. That has been extremely helpful for me. And that's the kind of therapy I'm in now. But, and different combinations of things. So that's one tool in my toolkit that I go back to time and time and time again. Number two is physical healing. So I also have a chronic autoimmune illness, which is very, very common for people with trauma to develop. And so working with really well-educated, well-trained medical professionals who understand the mind-body connection has been very important for me. Self-care. So, I struggle with a lot of insomnia. And so making sure that I have a proper sleep routine, I have, really strict boundaries around drinking too much, around not getting sleep, around being around toxic people, boundaries in relationships, all of those things promote self-care for me. And then I do things, massage and things like that to really kind of promote both psychological healing from touch, but also physical healing because your body holds so much stress. And then relationships really, really are key. And for people with trauma, relationships can be really incredibly challenging because you may have trust issues. You may have, psychological issues, like you get triggered, for example, quite easily by things. You may be surrounded by people who just don't understand what trauma is. And so forging relationships where you feel unconditionally loved and really safe and very supported that's just not negotiable. And the closer I get to 50, the less nonsense I put up with anyway. But having complex PTSD, meaning I was exposed to multiple traumas over a span of time, means that relationships are my lifeline. They really are my lifeline. So not only are my friendships powerful, my team, the people I hire to come work in my company, very important. My marriage, my relationship with my children, all very, very important to me to remain healthy, but also to be a healthy participant in society.
Yes. That is a lot of great tools and information for people to think about. And I know a lot of people that I've been in touch with and perhaps that are listening today who still get frustrated using all of those tools and still feel like, what's wrong with me? And to me, part of the self-care is also the words that we're saying about ourselves.
Yes.
And being able to know that it's not your fault, because we get into self-blame and what's wrong with me? I'm just broken. I'll never be better. And all of those kind of things. And I see you're shaking your head for those of you who can't see her. that you're relating to that. So how would you speak to that woman who is in the middle of this process and is feeling like, will it ever get better? What would you say to her?
I would say one of the most important questions you can replace in your own mind and even in your conversation with other people is the question that Oprah Winfrey has most recently posed with her brand new book. And that replacement is not what's wrong with me, it's what happened. What happened to me? Because it's very, very easy to feel broken, especially when a part of your brain is not working the way a non-traumatized brain or a brain without depression or anxiety works. It works very, very differently. So it's easy to conclude that you're broken. It's easy to conclude that you're sick. It's easy to conclude that, things are never going to get better. But I think that reframing how you look at what's going on with you, that in a way that allows you to release shame, to release guilt, and to open you up to creative possibilities for wellness is incredibly important. And this is the way I look at exactly, what happened to me is it's something someone did to me. There's nothing I could have done about it. There's not, and in all of these situations, even when you feel like, oh, I could have done something, or I could have said something, or the truth is you didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
And something happened to you.
Yes.
Instead of there's something wrong with you.
Yes.
Because if you don't start reframing that, you will just be in this on this hamster wheel that takes you nowhere except towards more exhaustion and guilt and shame, and less opened to possibilities for solutions.
Yes. I love that. Yes. And that hamster wheel we get stuck on a lot. And the things that are going on in our brain the thoughts, the processes keeps us stuck there. And so that's one of the reasons why coaching and therapy is it helps us to reframe things and to see things from a different light. And I love that sentence. I wrote it down. What happened to me instead of what's wrong with me.
And I wish we would ask other people. I mean, we also get very critical and judgmental of other people. And what kind of compassion would flood into the world if we stopped saying, what's wrong with that person, and started asking, what happened to that person?
Yes.
That they would behave that way, that they would be so hateful, that they would be acting in a way that's destructive or unhealthy or whatever, instead of immediately jumping to judgment about what's wrong with you. Because believe me, they've asked themselves that more than once. So I feel like that could really start to shift things in the world.
I think that's very true. I have said over all of the chaos that's happened in the world, the last year and now year and a half, is if we could all just be more compassionate, if we could just be more compassionate of each other, things would change dramatically in the world. And I'm with you on that one. So as we start to wrap up here today, it always goes faster than I really wanted to, because we resonate with the same kind of different stories, same pain that we have is we can't say one pain is bigger than the other because it's mine and it's yours. And we just can resonate in understanding that we were designed for greatness. There's more in us than has what happened to me.
Yes.
There's more there to be able to make a bigger impact. So one other question as we wrap up is if you, this may sound a little deep, but if you are on your last, many years from now and you're ready to die, what are your lasting thoughts and words that you would want to be recorded that Kelly said?
So if these were my parting gifts, so to speak, I would say, a few things. Number one, I would say your best was always good enough. Was always good enough. I would remind people that there's never a situation where perfection is the answer. It's never, ever the answer. I would say forgiveness is always the way, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And I would also say that, and this is really, I'm saying this now, you know how you need to teach the things you need to learn also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the things I'm working on right now is that fun is required. It's a required part of the journey. So I would say, don't forget to have fun along the way.
Yeah. One of my coaches said to me, Donna, what are you doing for fun this week? Mm-hmm. And I looked really puzzled and I go, I schedule my spontaneity. Because I'm like, we get that. The control, the planning that goes into making me feel safe. Mm-hmm. Spontaneity doesn't feel okay. And so
it gets squeezed out. It gets squeezed out. So I think just being curious about where can I just add just a little bit more? And then before you know it, you've built it up over time and you don't feel unsafe. So yeah.
I remember once I went to visit, I was going to a conference and I had a day for my flight, there was a day where I had a day free. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine took me to an amusement park and I went on a water slide and I was laughing and I'm like, I had this moment. When's the last time you laughed? Mm-hmm. When's the time you laughed like this? Mm-hmm. And I was in my 30s and I'm like, I don't remember the last time I laughed. Mm-hmm. So I'm asking you, when's the last time you laughed and you just had fun and relaxed a little bit? So I love those. Those are some wonderful closing comments and things of what you might finally say. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you?
Oh, I'm easy to find. You can find me at kellyruta.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, or you can find me on LinkedIn. And I do answer all of my own messages. So feel free to reach out and touch base and introduce yourself. I'd be excited to hear from you.
Awesome. And we will put all of that contact information in the show notes. So again, Kelly, thank you very much for sharing today.
Thank you for having me.
I loved my conversation with Kelly, as I do with every guest, but some of her last closing comments, you should write down and review them and utilize them to be able to be all that you can be. I want to thank you for listening to this podcast, for sharing it with your friends. I love you to give reviews of this podcast. Those things help us to reach more women so that we can share the inspiration and the thoughts that you were designed for greatness and share other women's stories. If you feel like you're struggling today, as your life mastery coach, I would love to have a conversation with you, a complimentary consultation to be able to help you turn your baggage into luggage so you can live the life you've always dreamed with confidence and ease. So until next time, this is Donna wishing you the very best, and we will talk back here again soon. Have a wonderful day.